The crash came without warning. One moment the stars were steady outside the cockpit glass. The next they spun like wild sparks across the darkness. Arik pulled at the controls, but the scout ship did not listen. Fire streaked across the panels as alarms screamed in his ears. His chest tightened as gravity threw him against the harness. The last thing he saw before blacking out was the burning shape of his ship cutting across the sky of a world he had never seen before. When he opened his eyes again, the silence was complete. His throat was dry and the smell of smoke clung to the air. His ship was a broken shell, half buried in the soil of a strange valley. The stars above were faint, hidden by thick clouds, and a pale light came from a moon hanging low over the horizon. Arik groaned and pushed himself up. His arm throbbed, his head ached, but he was alive. He touched the side of the ruined console and whispered to himself, almost in disbelief, "Still breathing." Then he froze. Someone was there. A figure stood a short distance away, watching him. Not moving, not speaking, just watching. It was a girl, but not human. Her skin carried a faint glow as if the moonlight itself lived beneath it. Her eyes were large, silver like polished metal, and her hair drifted around her shoulders in a way that looked almost weightless. She wore a garment that seemed grown rather than sewn, soft and pale like the petals of a flower. Arik's pulse quickened. He pushed himself back against the wreckage, searching for his sidearm, but the weapon was gone. The figure did not step closer. She simply stood, watching him with a gaze that was steady and unblinking. "Who are you?" Arik called, his voice hoarse. The girl tilted her head slightly as if listening to something only she could hear. At last she spoke. Her voice was quiet, flowing like water across stone. "You are awake." Arik blinked, surprised she spoke his language, though the words came with a soft, strange rhythm. "Yes, I am awake." "What are you doing here? Were you following me?" Her eyes did not leave his face. "You fell from the sky. I found you. I stayed." Arik tried to stand, but his legs trembled. Pain shot through his arm and he stumbled forward. The girl moved then, quick but gentle, steadying him before he could fall. Her touch was cool, almost calming, and for the first time he saw a faint trace of emotion in her face. Concern, perhaps, or something close to it. Arik pulled back slightly, though not roughly. "Why are you watching me?" he asked. "You were here even when I slept, weren't you?" "I saw you when I opened my eyes." The girl lowered her gaze for a moment. Then she lifted it again, and her voice was so soft that he almost missed the words. "You saved me in a dream once." Arik stared at her, unsure he had heard correctly. "What did you say?" Her silver eyes seemed to shine brighter in the pale light. She repeated without hesitation, "You saved me in a dream once." The words hung in the air, strange and heavy. Arik tried to laugh, though it came out more like a cough. "That's not possible. We've never met before. I've never even been to this world." The girl did not argue. She only looked at him as if the truth was simple and needed no proof. "Still," she said, "you saved me." Arik shook his head. He felt dizzy, though not only from his injuries. The valley seemed too quiet, too empty, as if the world itself was holding its breath. He looked at the girl again, trying to find some explanation. Perhaps she had seen another human before him. Perhaps she had mistaken him for someone else. But there was something in her gaze that made him doubt every simple answer. "Listen," Arik said carefully. "My ship is broken. I need to find shelter, maybe food, maybe water. Can you help me?" The girl nodded once. "Yes, there is water nearby. There are safe places." She turned, moving with quiet steps toward the shadow of the hills. Arik hesitated but followed. His legs felt heavy, but he forced himself to keep moving. Each step away from the wreck felt like a step deeper into the unknown. The path wound between tall stones and broken structures half buried in the soil. They did not look natural. Arik paused, staring at them. Towers that had fallen long ago. Walls covered with symbols he did not understand. The ruins of something once great. The girl glanced back at him. "This place belonged to my people. Long ago." Arik swallowed, his throat dry. "And now?" Her voice grew even softer. "Now only I remain." They reached a pool of clear water hidden between rocks. Arik knelt and drank, the cold liquid filling him with strength. When he lifted his head, the girl was still watching him. Always watching, Arik wiped his mouth and sat back. "Tell me your name," he said. "Lyra," she answered. "Lyra," he repeated slowly. "I'm Arik." Her lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close. I know. The words sent a chill through him. How could you know my name? She tilted her head again. Because I dreamed it. I dreamed of you before you came. You pulled me out of the fire. You carried me away from the dark. I saw your face. I heard your name. That is why I stayed when I found you. I was waiting for you to wake. Arik felt his skin prickle. He wanted to say it was impossible. He wanted to tell her she was mistaken. Yet when she spoke, her voice held no doubt. It was not a guess or a hope. It was memory. The fire crackled faintly from the wreck behind them. The valley stretched wide and silent. Arik leaned back against the stone and closed his eyes for a moment. Exhaustion pulled at him, but so did curiosity. He opened his eyes again and looked at her. You said I saved you in a dream. What did you mean? What dream was it? Lyra lowered herself to sit across from him. Her silver eyes did not blink. It was a night of fear. Shadows came for me. They were not of this world. They wanted to take everything from me. I was falling, but you caught me. You stood between me and the dark. You gave me light. That is how I lived. That is why I am here. Arik listened, his mind racing. Could it be some kind of vision? A memory from another time? Or was it only the imagination of someone who had been alone too long? He could not decide. Yet the calm certainty in her eyes made it hard to dismiss. The moon rose higher, casting pale silver across the stones. The night air grew cooler. Arik pulled his torn jacket tighter around his shoulders. You're still watching me, he said quietly. Yes, Lyra replied. Why? Her answer came with no pause, no hesitation. Because you saved me in a dream once, and I do not want to forget. Arik stared at her, his heart steady but heavy. He had come to this world by accident, but it seemed less and less like chance. The silence of the valley pressed close, as if waiting for what would happen next. And though he was a man who trusted reason above all else, a part of him whispered that her words might be true. Morning came slowly to the valley. The light of the sun was pale and cold, falling across broken towers and half-buried walls. Arik woke to the sound of soft footsteps near the edge of the pool. Lyra was standing there, her silver eyes turned toward the rising sun. She looked as if she had been awake for hours. Arik stretched, his muscles aching from the crash and from sleeping on the hard ground. He rose carefully, his arms still sore, and stepped closer to the water. Lyra turned her gaze toward him the moment he moved, as if she had been waiting. You watched me again, Arik said, his voice half serious, half curious. Lyra gave a small nod. I will watch until I am certain you are safe. Arik bent down and splashed water on his face. The cold woke him fully, but it also sharpened the questions pressing against his mind. He looked at Lyra again, standing so still against the morning light. You said this was once the land of your people, he said. What happened to them? Her expression darkened, and for the first time Arik saw sadness in her eyes. She lowered her gaze, her voice barely above a whisper. They were taken, not by war, not by hunger, but by shadows that come in silence. They come when you sleep. They feed on what you are inside. When you wake, there is nothing left. Only emptiness, Arik frowned. Shadows? You mean some kind of enemy? Raiders, machines? Lyra shook her head slowly. Not like that. They are not flesh. They are not metal. They are hunger that walks through thought. They move between dream and waking. You cannot see them until it is too late. My people tried to fight, but the shadows took their memories, their courage, their will. One by one they fell. Only I remain. Her words carried a weight that made the valley seem colder. Arik sat back against the stone, silent for a long moment. He had seen battles. He had seen enemies that used fear and lies, but nothing like what she described. Still, he could not dismiss her. There was no doubt in her voice, no hesitation. And you survived, he said at last. Yes, Lyra replied. Her gaze returned to him, steady and unwavering. Because of you, Arik rubbed his forehead. Because of me in a dream. You keep saying that. It is true, she said. When the shadows came for me, I was falling. You pulled me away. I did not know your name then, but I knew your face. And now you're here. Arik did not know how to answer. Part of him wanted to call it impossible. Yet deep inside, something told him her words were not empty. He remembered strange dreams of fire, of running through darkness, of reaching out to someone he could not see, dreams that had haunted him during long nights in space. Could those dreams have been hers as well? He pushed the thought aside for now and stood. If we're going to survive here, we need more than water. Do you know where there's food or shelter stronger than these stones? Lyra nodded. There is a place deeper in the ruins. My people built machines there. They still sleep, but they hold power. Food can be made. Light can be made. It is safer. Arik motioned for her to lead. Then let's go. They walked through the valley past broken walls and silent towers. The air was dry, filled with the faint hum of energy that seemed to linger in the stones. The ruins stretched far too large to belong to a small colony. Arik studied the shapes and lines of the buildings. These structures, he said, they look advanced. Your people, they were not just settlers. They were builders of something greater. Lyra's eyes flickered with a trace of pride. Yes, they came here long ago. They shaped the land. They wove light into stone. But even strength and wisdom could not stop the shadows. As they moved deeper, Arik began to feel as if unseen eyes were following them. The silence grew heavier. Once he thought he saw movement in the corner of his vision, but when he turned, there was nothing. Lyra must have noticed his unease. They are not here, she said quietly. Not yet. The shadows are slow to wake in daylight, but when night falls, they will notice you. You are not of this world, and they will hunger for you. Arik tightened his jaw. Then we need to be ready before night comes. At last they reached a great hall, its roof broken, but its walls still standing strong. Strange symbols covered the stone, glowing faintly with silver light. At the center of the hall stood a circular platform surrounded by tall pillars. This was the heart of the colony, Lyra said. The place of the beacon. Arik stepped closer, brushing his hand across the cold surface of the platform. Beacon? What kind of beacon? One that speaks to the stars, Lyra explained. It was meant to guide travelers, to call for allies, but it fell silent when the shadows came. Now it waits. Arik examined the pillars. Some were cracked, others still whole. Strange panels and wires were fused into the stone. He felt the faint vibration of dormant power. Can it be fixed? He asked. Perhaps, Lyra said, but it will need two to wake it. One cannot stand against the dream alone. That is why I have waited. That is why I watched you. I knew you would come. Arik turned to her sharply. You waited? You knew I would come? You mean you were certain of this? Her silver eyes shone with quiet certainty. Yes, because I saw you. I trusted the dream. Arik exhaled, shaking his head. The logic of it made no sense, but her conviction was unshakable. They spent hours exploring the hall. Lyra showed him smaller chambers filled with strange machines that hummed faintly when touched. She pressed her palm to one of them, and a soft light spread across the room. Panels opened to reveal sealed containers. Inside were small blocks that looked like stone but smelled faintly of grain. Food, Lyra said simply. Not as it once was, but it will keep us strong. Arik tested a piece carefully. It was dry but edible. He chewed slowly, watching Lyra as she ate her own portion with calm grace. When the meal was finished, they sat near the base of the beacon. The sun outside was fading and shadows stretched long across the ruins. Arik broke the silence. Lyra, these shadows you spoke of, how do they attack? How do they kill? She looked at him, her eyes serious. They come first in dreams. They find what you fear, what you doubt, and they twist it. They take your will. When you wake, you are weaker. Each night they take more, until nothing is left. You become empty. You breathe, you move, but you are no longer yourself. Arik's stomach tightened. And you fought them? Yes, she said. I fought with all I had. But in the end, I could not win. They had taken everyone else. I was alone. That was when you came. Not here, not in waking, but in the dream. You pulled me back. You gave me strength when mine was gone. That is why I live. Her words left Arik silent again. He could not deny the echo of her story in his own memories. The dreams he had long thought were only strange visions now seemed more real. He remembered reaching into darkness, pulling at someone unseen. He remembered fire and whispers of fear, and always a pair of silver eyes in the shadows. Night began to fall. The air grew colder. The silver glow of the walls brightened faintly as the sky darkened. Lyra moved closer to him. Her voice was calm, but her eyes revealed the weight of warning. They will come tonight. They will test you. If you are not strong, they will take you as they took the others. Arik clenched his fists. Then we fight. We hold together and we fight. Lyra gave a slow nod. Yes. Together. The hall fell into silence, broken only by the distant whisper of wind through the ruins. Arik felt the weight of the coming night pressing against him. He had faced battles before, but never one fought in dreams. Yet when he looked at Lyra, he saw no fear in her gaze, only certainty, and for the first time since the crash, he believed her. The night inside the beacon hall was not like other nights. Outside, the ruins lay still beneath the pale moon, but within the stone walls, the air seemed alive with something unseen. The faint silver glow from the symbols on the walls brightened as darkness thickened, as if the ancient machines sensed what was coming. Arik sat against one of the pillars, his back straight, his hands resting on his knees. He forced his breathing to stay calm, though his heart was restless. Across from him, Lyra knelt on the platform at the center of the hall, her silver eyes half closed, her posture quiet and still. She looked as if she were listening to something beyond the walls. The silence stretched. Then, without warning, Arik felt it. It was not a sound or a sight. It was a weight pressing into his mind like cold fingers brushing against his thoughts. His chest tightened and the air seemed heavier. He looked around sharply, but nothing had changed. The hall was the same. The glow of the walls was the same. Lyra was still kneeling in silence, but inside his head a whisper began. "You are alone here." The voice was not loud, but it crawled into him like smoke. Arik clenched his fists and shook his head. "No," he muttered under his breath. "Not alone." The whisper came again, stronger. "You are far from your world, far from your people. They will never come. You will never leave this place." Arik's jaw tightened. He forced himself to look at Lyra. She opened her eyes and met his gaze. Her voice was steady. "They are here. Do not let them in." Arik nodded, holding on to her words, but the whispers grew louder. The air in the hall seemed to twist and the shadows along the walls lengthened. They stretched toward him, though no flame cast them. Shapes moved in the dark corners, thin and shifting, without form yet full of presence. Arik stood, his hand reaching instinctively for a weapon he no longer had. His eyes darted to every corner, but there was nothing solid to fight. The shadows did not move like creatures. They moved like thoughts given shape. "You failed them," another voice hissed in his mind. "Your crew, your people. You lived, but they burned." Images flashed before his eyes. The moment of the crash, fire tearing across the cockpit. Faces of comrades he had flown with before, their voices crying out in panic. He saw them falling, heard them screaming. "No," Arik said aloud, his voice sharp. "That is not real." "It is real," the whisper pressed. "You left them behind. You could not save them." His knees weakened as the memory twisted, growing darker. The ruined valley melted away, replaced by endless wreckage. The ground was covered in shattered ships and broken bodies. He stood in the middle of it, helpless, as the smoke rose around him. Then a hand touched his arm. The nightmare broke like glass. Arik blinked, and the beacon hall returned around him. The fire and wreckage were gone. Lyra stood beside him, her hand still on his arm, her silver eyes glowing. "They want you to believe," she said calmly. "That is how they take you. They cannot touch you unless you let them." Arik exhaled sharply, his chest burning. "They almost had me, but they did not," Lyra said. Her voice was soft but firm. "Because you are strong, and because we stand together." For a moment the whispers faded. The shadows shrank back. But the night was not finished. A new weight pressed into Arik's thoughts, heavier than before. This time it did not show wreckage. It showed him himself, alone, sitting in the dark, hollow-eyed, his spirit gone. His voice echoed with emptiness. "You cannot fight forever," the shadow Arik said. "You will tire. You will fall. Better to give in now. Better to end the struggle." The sight twisted his stomach. He could almost believe it. The exhaustion from the crash, the pain in his arm, the weight of isolation. It was easy to imagine giving up, sinking into silence, letting it end. Then Lyra stepped between him and the vision. She faced the shadow Arik with eyes full of light. "He is not alone," she said. "He saved me once. He will stand again. You cannot take what is not yours." Her words cut through the illusion. The shadow Arik wavered, then dissolved into smoke. The hall grew colder. The whispers turned into a chorus, harsh and impatient. The shadows on the walls gathered, pulling together, forming a shape larger and darker than before. For the first time, Arik saw something almost physical, a towering figure with no face, only a hollow void where its head should be. Its arms stretched long and thin, reaching toward them. Lyra's voice rose steady and commanding. "Do not let them touch you. They are fear and hunger, nothing more." Arik stood tall, his fists clenched. "If they want me, they'll have to fight for me. the figure advanced. The ground beneath the platform trembled. The glow of the pillars flickered, as if the machines themselves sensed the danger. Arik braced himself, ready to strike though he had no blade or gun. But as the shadow's hand reached out, Lyra caught his arm again. Not with fists. With will. Close your eyes. Stand with me. Arik hesitated, then obeyed. He closed his eyes. He felt her hand tighten, cool and steady. Listen, she whispered. Do you hear them? The whispers pressed into his mind again, but this time he pushed back. He thought of the faces of his comrades, not as the shadows had shown them, but as he remembered them in truth. He thought of their laughter, their courage, their trust. He thought of the oath he had taken to fly not only for himself but for others. I am not empty, he said firmly. I am not broken. Lyra's voice joined his, clear and bright. And he is not alone. The pillars around them flared with light. The glow swept across the platform, forming a ring of silver energy. The towering shadow shrieked, though it had no mouth, and recoiled as the light struck it. The whispers cracked into silence. The cold weight in Arik's mind lifted. When he opened his eyes, the figure was gone. The hall was quiet again. Lyra released his arm slowly. Her eyes searched his face. You fought well. Arik exhaled, his chest rising and falling. Sweat clung to his forehead, but his eyes were clear. That was not just a dream, he said. That was real. Yes, Lyra replied. They are both. Dream and waking. That is their power. But now you see why my people fell. One by one, they lost their strength. They gave in. They believed the lies. Arik looked around at the silent ruins. And you were left alone to face them. Lyra nodded. Until you came. He studied her for a long moment, then said quietly, And now I believe you. I believe I was there in your dream. I don't understand how, but I was. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. I knew you would remember. Arik moved to the base of the beacon and placed his hand on the stone. It was warm now, humming with new life. This machine. It reacted when we stood together, didn't it? Yes, Lyra said. It was built to fight them. But it cannot wake with one mind alone. It needs two, bound by trust. Arik turned to her. Then we'll wake it. We'll use it against them. She lowered her head in agreement. Together we can. The night stretched on, but the shadows did not return. The hall remained calm, the light of the pillars standing guard around them. Arik lay down near the platform, exhausted but no longer afraid. Lyra sat nearby, as always watching. Before sleep took him, Arik spoke softly. Lyra? She tilted her head slightly. Yes. You said once that I saved you in a dream, but tonight you saved me. Her silver eyes glimmered in the dim light. That is what it means to stand together. We save each other. And with those words, Arik finally let his eyes close, unafraid of the dreams that would come. The next morning came with a pale light that filled the beacon hall through cracks in the broken roof. Arik sat awake, his eyes heavy but his mind sharp. He had slept, but not peacefully. Dreams had pressed against him again, though weaker this time. Whenever the shadows reached for him, he felt Lyra's presence close, steadying him. Lyra stood at the center of the platform. Her eyes were closed, her hands raised slightly above the stone. The pillars glowed faintly as if answering her. Arik stepped closer. You're trying to wake it. Her eyes opened, silver light catching the morning sun. Yes, it will take more than me. It waits for us both. That is why it stirred last night. When you fought beside me, the beacon felt it. Arik nodded slowly. So what do we need to do? We must enter it, Lyra said. Not with our bodies, but with our minds. It is a trial. It tests those who wish to use its power. If we succeed, it will awaken fully. If we fail, it will turn away from us. Arik crossed his arms. What kind of trial? Her gaze was steady. It will search us. It will press against our fears, our doubts, our choices. We must hold together. If one falls, both may fail. Arik looked at the pillars again. Their glow pulsed like a heartbeat. He had faced battles, but this was unlike any he had known. Yet he remembered the shadows of the night before. He remembered how they twisted truth into lies. If the beacon could fight them, then it was worth any risk. Then let's do it, he said. Lyra gave a slow nod. She stepped to the center of the platform and extended her hand. Arik placed his hand in hers. Her skin was cool, her grip firm. The stone beneath them vibrated. The glow of the pillars spread, rising into arcs of light that joined above their heads. Arik's vision blurred. The hall dissolved. The ground vanished. They stood in darkness. At first Arik thought it was emptiness, but then the shadows stirred and shapes began to form. A wide plain stretched under their feet, black and endless. The sky above was full of cracks of white light like shattered glass. The air was heavy, pressing against their chests. "This is the trial," Lyra said. Her voice echoed strangely in the vast space. "Stay close to me." Arik nodded, scanning the plain. He could already feel the pressure against his thoughts, the same as the night before but sharper. Whispers brushed at the edges of his mind. "You cannot protect her," one hissed. "You cannot save yourself," another pressed. The ground shifted. In the distance, figures began to rise. At first they were only shadows, but then they took shape. Arik froze as he recognized the faces. His old crew. Men and women he had flown with, their uniforms torn, their eyes empty. One stepped forward, her voice hollow. "Why did you leave us, Arik? Why did you survive when we did not?" Arik's chest tightened. He remembered the day of the raid. The ships burning, the comms filled with voices calling for help. He had been powerless then, forced to watch comrades fall. The guilt had haunted him ever since. Lyra's hand tightened on his. "It is not them," she said firmly. "They are gone. These are lies." But the figures came closer, their voices sharper. "You abandoned us. You are weak. You are unworthy." Arik's throat burned. For a moment he believed the words. But then he looked at Lyra, standing strong beside him. Her silver eyes were clear and her presence steadied him. "No," Arik said at last, his voice firm. "I did not abandon them. I could not save them, but I did not leave them. I carry them with me still." The shadows shuddered. The figures twisted, their forms melting into smoke before dissolving into the dark. The plain was empty again. Arik let out a long breath. His shoulders felt lighter, but then the ground shifted again. This time the trial turned toward Lyra. Shapes rose from the darkness. They were tall and faceless, their voices deep and hollow. "You failed your people," they said. "You were the last. You could not save them. You lived while they were taken. You are nothing without them." Lyra's face grew pale, though she stood tall. Her hand trembled in Arik's. Arik looked at her. "Don't listen. They're lies." But the voices pressed harder. "You are alone, Lyra. You will always be alone. Even he will leave you. Even he will fail you." Arik stepped forward, his voice rising. "Enough." The shadows hissed, but he did not stop. He turned to Lyra. "You're not alone. You survived because you're strong. You fought when no one else could, and now I'm here. I won't leave you. Not in waking, not in dreams." Her silver eyes filled with light again. Her trembling stopped. She lifted her chin and faced the shadows. "You cannot take me. I am not nothing. I am alive, and I am not alone." The faceless figures screamed and shattered into mist. The plain shook as if rejecting them. For a moment silence returned. But then the ground cracked. From the fissures rose a single figure larger than the others. Its form was dark, shifting between many shapes. Sometimes it looked like Arik himself. Sometimes it looked like Lyra. Sometimes it was both together, broken and twisted. "This is the final choice," Lyra whispered. "It will show us our worst fear." The figure's voice echoed like thunder. "You cannot trust each other. You cannot stand together. One will fall, and the other will be left behind. Choose who will be sacrificed." Arik stiffened. "We're not choosing. We both walk out." The figure laughed, a deep hollow sound. "One must break. One must fail. That is the truth of all things. You cannot both survive." The ground shook, splitting between them. A great chasm opened, and Arik felt Lyra's hand slipping from his. He lunged, gripping her tighter. "Hold on," he shouted. The figure loomed above them. "Let go, save yourself. She will only drag you down." The chasm widened. Lyra's feet slipped toward the edge. She looked at him, her eyes calm despite the danger. "If you let go," she said softly, "you may live. If you hold on, you may fall." Arik shook his head fiercely. "No, I won't let go. Not now, not ever," the figure roared. "Fool, you cannot save her. You cannot save anyone. You are destined to fail." Arik pulled her closer, his grip unshaken. "Maybe I can't save everyone, but I can choose to stand. I can choose not to let go. That is my answer." The words echoed across the plain. The chasm stopped widening. The figure trembled. Lyra's silver eyes shone brighter than ever. She placed her free hand on his arm. "And I choose the same," she said. "I will not let you fall." Together they pulled against the weight of the shadow. The chasm closed. The figure screamed, its form twisting and breaking apart. Light burst from the cracks in its body, spilling across the plain. The darkness shattered. Arik opened his eyes. He was back in the beacon hall, standing on the platform. The pillars blazed with silver light. The air thrummed with power. Lyra was beside him, still holding his hand. Her face glowed with calm strength. "We passed," she said softly. Arik looked at the pillars, at the beacon alive again with energy. "We did more than pass. We proved them wrong." The hall filled with a deep, steady hum. The light spread outward, racing through cracks in the walls across the ruins beyond. The entire valley seemed to awaken, as if the machines of her people had been waiting for this moment. Arik turned to Lyra. "What happens now?" She met his eyes, her voice full of quiet certainty. "Now the beacon is ours, and the shadows will know we are not theirs to claim." The light of the beacon spread far across the ruins. It rushed through broken towers and shattered walls, filling every corner with silver glow. The machines of the lost city stirred, their silent voices returning in a low song that rose into the air. For the first time since her people had fallen, Lyra felt the land alive again. Arik stood beside her, watching as the light swept outward like ripples on water. He had seen many battles and victories, but none like this. This was not just the turning on of old machines. It felt larger, older, like a promise kept after years of waiting. Lyra's eyes shone with wonder. "It answers us. The beacon accepts us." Arik crossed his arms, staring at the glow spreading into the mountains. "So what now? Do we use it as a weapon?" She shook her head. "Not a weapon, a shield. It was built to fight the Dream Eaters. With its power, their reach will weaken. Where the beacon shines, their shadows cannot grow." Arik nodded slowly. Relief touched his chest, but with it came a heavy thought. "They'll know we woke it. They'll come." "Yes," she agreed, "but this time we will not face them powerless." The pillars pulsed again. A path of light formed across the floor of the hall, leading to a hidden chamber at the far side. Without speaking, both of them knew it was calling. They followed the light into the chamber. Inside was a great stone table carved with lines of silver that glowed like rivers. At the center lay two crystal bands, shaped to fit a wrist, one slightly larger than the other. Lyra stepped closer, her voice quiet with respect. "These are the bonds of the beacon. They join those who share trust. They focus its strength through chosen hands." Arik studied them. "So it chose us," she nodded. "Yes, we passed the trial together. The beacon will answer only to us now." They each lifted a band. The crystal was cool at first, then warm to their touch. When Arik placed his around his wrist, it tightened gently, forming a perfect fit. Lyra did the same. The bands glowed, linking with the light of the beacon. Arik felt a wave rush through him. It was not just energy, but memory. Images filled his mind. Visions of Lyra's people standing in unity, their hands joined around the beacon as it blazed against the night. He felt their hope, their strength, their refusal to surrender to fear. And then he felt the weight of their loss, the silence after their fall. He gasped and steadied himself. Lyra's hand rested lightly on his arm. She had felt the same. "They left this power behind for us," she whispered. "Not only for me, but for you as well. The beacon sees you as part of its line." Arik's jaw tightened. He was no hero, only a soldier who had survived too many battles. Yet here he stood, bound to something older and greater than himself. For the first time, he felt he carried not only the memory of his lost crew, but the hope of a fallen world too. The ground shook suddenly. Dust fell from the roof. A low growl echoed through the ruins, not of stone, but of something alive. Arik pulled his weapon. "They're coming." The glow of the beacon dimmed for a heartbeat, as if bracing against a storm. Outside, the shadows gathered again. The Dream Eaters had sensed the awakening. Their hunger sharpened. Arik and Lyra ran back to the platform. The valley beyond the broken walls rippled with darkness. Tall figures formed out of smoke, hundreds of them, their hollow voices rising together in a chorus of rage. "You cannot defy us. You cannot keep what is ours." The beacon pulsed, throwing out waves of silver light that pushed the shadows back. But the creatures pressed harder. Their whispers filled the air, thick and sharp. Arik gritted his teeth. "They're stronger than before." Lyra raised her wrist, the crystal band glowing. "Then we use the beacon fully, together." They stood side by side at the center of the platform. They lifted their hands and the light of the beacon poured into them, Silver fire spread across their arms, through their bodies, joining them in a single rhythm. The shadows lunged. They rushed like a black tide pouring through the valley, climbing the broken towers, reaching for the hall. Arik closed his eyes and focused. He felt the beacon inside his mind. He remembered the trial, the lies the shadows had whispered. He remembered choosing not to let go. That choice gave him strength now. He poured it into the beacon. Lyra did the same. She remembered her people, their fall and her survival. She remembered Arik's words, that she was not alone, that she was alive. The choice gave her strength. She poured it into the beacon too. The platform shook as light burst outward. It spread in a wide arc across the valley, striking the shadows. Wherever the light touched, the Dream Eaters screamed. Their forms twisted, broken apart by the blaze, yet more came. The tide seemed endless. "They won't stop," Arik shouted over the roar. "Then neither will we," Lyra answered, her voice fierce. The beacon flared again. Silver light cut through the sky, piercing the cracks above. The Dream Eaters screamed louder. They tried to twist into Arik's mind, to show him failure and guilt again. But the beacon shielded him, and Lyra's presence beside him kept him steady. At the same time, the Dream Eaters tried to claw into Lyra's memories, to tell her she was still alone. But Arik's presence burned beside her, firm and unyielding, breaking their lies apart. Together they pressed forward. Minutes felt like hours. The valley was a battlefield of light and shadow. Towers crumbled under the weight of the storm. But still the beacon held. Still Arik and Lyra stood side by side, the bands on their wrists blazing. Finally the tide broke. The last of the Dream Eaters shrieked and dissolved, torn apart by the beacon's light. Silence fell. Arik fell to one knee, breathing hard. The glow around him dimmed, though the band still pulsed with quiet light. Lyra knelt beside him, her hand steady on his shoulder. "It is over." He looked at the empty valley. "For now," she nodded slowly. "Yes, but their hold here is broken. The beacon will keep them away. They cannot return while its light shines." The ruins were quiet again, but no longer lifeless. Machines hummed softly, carrying the beacon's power outward into the land. The air itself felt lighter, freed from the grip of shadow. Arik stood and looked at Lyra. "So what happens to us now?" She studied him for a long moment. "We guard it. The beacon is our bond now. It is not only my people's legacy, it is yours as well." Arik exhaled slowly. He had not expected this when he crashed on the planet. He had not expected to be tied to a destiny larger than himself. But he thought of his crew, of the dreams that had haunted him. He thought of the trial, of the choice to hold on, of Lyra's words. "Then we guard it together," he said firmly. Lyra's eyes softened, her silver gaze calm and sure. Together. The two of them stood on the platform side by side as the sun rose over the valley. The beacon blazed with the light of both human and alien will. The shadows were gone, and though they might return elsewhere, here a flame had been lit that would not die. Arik turned his head slightly, catching her watching him again. He gave a small smile. "You're still watching me?" She smiled back, gentle and bright. "Yes, because you saved me in a dream once, and you saved me again here." Arik felt a warmth rise in his chest, stronger than any victory he had known. For the first time, he believed that maybe humanity's strength was not only in weapons or ships, but in the bonds they chose, even across worlds and dreams. And with that bond, they would face whatever came next.